All right, I'm out here in the wood lot. We're going to get right into it. I'm working on my winter wood. One thing you guys have to do is be proactive, not reactive, and also do your own homework. Man, it's crazy out here because a lot of the stuff that you're hearing from your box in your living room, on your wall, is full of lies and deceit, and it's all done for a reason. There's a game plan happening here, and a lot of Americans really don't understand it, okay? One thing I want to touch on real quick before we get into this video, the politics of compliance, but I want you to think about all the movies and TV shows that are coming out. It seems like they're rehashing a lot of old stuff. The world is very secular. It's not linear. So whatever happens usually comes around. Do you guys ever notice like certain fashions, they're in style, they kind of fade away, and then they come back? That happens a lot, and so do things in history, because if you don't know history, they say you're bound to repeat it. But what I want to do is drop this 14-minute video in here right now. It talks about the politics of compliance. I want you to understand that there's nothing new under the sun. They're rehashing all the old stuff, and they failed to teach this stuff in school anymore, so these generations are going to get caught up in all this stuff, and they're not going to know what's going on. So these videos are to help educate us so we all know as American citizens, and wherever you are, that this is a calculated plan to take us down, okay, and to usher in the reset. Everyone keeps talking about the reset. How come it's so hard to believe there's an actual plan to do it? I know they're programming you for short memory spans, you know, shorts, and shorter videos are better, but this is going to require you to pay full attention and listen to what he says about the politics of compliance.
Talk is titled, which I found out this morning, The Target is You. What I want to talk to you about is actually the politics of compliance is the name I've given this, and it's actually derived from a strategy that Mao Zedong used. But to make the politics of compliance work, the target is actually you, and I don't just mean you with wrong political opinions who don't have souls. I mean everybody. There are generally three categories of people where it comes to the politics of compliance. There are the people who are complying, there are the people who are refusing, and the people who aren't sure. And all three are targeted by the politics of compliance roughly the same way, actually, with the same dynamic. The goal is, of course, to get the compliant to feel better than everybody else, but also frustrated with everybody else. It is to convince those who are not sure to join the program and to begin to comply, and it is to use the people who refuse to comply as the wedge around which the entire thing turns. In fact, it's to dehumanize them and motivate the other two groups to try to destroy them. So Mao Zedong very simply took over China with a very small number of conceptual concepts that I'm lumping together in what I'm calling a politics of compliance. It's, he separated the population into two broad categories. I just mentioned three, well he cut it into two. So there's an oversimplification, and those two categories are the people and the enemies of the people. Not to put too fine a point on it, that's what he called them. The people and the enemies of the people. And what he said is, who are the people? Well, he gives this kind of historical record in 1957 of who counted as the people when. And there's a consistent running theme through his you know, eight or nine maybe examples of different historical periods of the Chinese story, whether it's the Japanese War, the Sino-Japanese War, the second one, whether it's the period of building socialism after he took power in 1949, whether it's during his first, second, or third five-year plan. And the examples all have the single theme that the people are the people who agree with Mao, and the enemies of the people are the people who don't agree with Mao. And it turns out to be really that simple. The people at the period of building socialism are those who support the building of socialism, and the enemies of the people are those who resist the building of socialism. He says it explicitly that clearly. And this sets up a dynamic that I think the best name for is hatecraft. And here's how it works. The goal of this split is to say that there is a correct perspective on all things, a sacred science as Robert Lifton described it. And that's called the people's perspective, at least it was in China. We could call it whatever, the critical race perspective on race. We could call it the queer perspective on sexual politics, and we can all imagine a bunch of examples under COVID. The public health perspective, I guess, would be the right name for it. We certainly aren't, I see red hats in the crowd. You're not allowed to have those. That's the deplorable side of a different perspective. But this is the general idea. There are the people who do the right thing, there are people who do the wrong thing, and the goal is to bring people into the people's perspective, which is also called agreeing with the tyranny. And what you do in order to achieve this idea is that you separate the population into two broad categories, the people and the enemies of the people, and then you say, well, what we want is unity. We want unity. But there are certain elements in the population who are preventing us from unity and moving into the future that we could be having, and it's their fault. The people want to move forward, and the enemies of the people are stopping them. The people want to open their businesses and go back about their lives, but the people who won't wear masks or take a shot or socially distance or close down their lives or whatever else in the COVID department are stopping them. We want to open the country back up, but we can't because there's anti-vaxxers. They are the problem, and that is hatecraft. That is teaching the compliant to hate the people who are holding them back. We did what we were supposed to do. We complied. We did not get our freedom back. We took risks with our lives. We did not get our freedom back, and it's their fault. That's the essence of the politics of compliance. Mao called this formula unity, criticism, unity. He said we'll start with a desire for unity, and just parenthetically I'll mention the best way to create a desire for unity is to create a contentious, fractious, polarized situation where there's tremendous disunity. You start with a desire for unity. He says we then criticize and struggle, referring to his torture sessions that are called struggle sessions. We criticize and struggle those elements of the population who have incorrect opinions so that we can arrive at a new unity on a new basis. That's direct quote. New unity on a new basis. He called it socialist discipline. We call it sustainable and inclusive future. It's the same thing. We also call it New World Order. In other words, we can have unity, which everybody now wants, if and only if we all start to agree on how we're all going to live, which just so happen to be dictated by the tyrants. And everybody who isn't going along is holding us back. The larger the proportion of people that you can get to comply, the more powerful the hatecraft. Because they, like I said, put their lives on the line. They did things they probably didn't want to do. They sacrificed, they willingly gave away, I should say, their freedoms. Willingly gave away their freedoms, and other people didn't, and those people are selfish. Those people are bourgeois. Those people are racists as opposed to anti-racist. We could do this in every domain because this same exact dynamic is playing out in every domain. COVID, environmentalism, politics with your deplorable hat. Every single identity politics dimension you can imagine, from race to sex to gender to sexuality to ability status to fat status to national origin. Get ready for critical immigration theory this year. If you thought 2020's CRT was bad, you've got CIT coming this year, and its target is you because its actual target is national sovereignty and national citizenship, to be compared against global citizenship. People with a global perspective are seeking global unity, a system of interdependence from nation to nation. And these stupid, backwards, national-loving people who want to keep their national identities, their national citizenship, they care about being, say, American citizens rather than undocumented Americans or new Americans. Those are the words that are being used. They care more about their own citizenship and its benefits than they do about human rights. The child on the other side of the razor wire is your neighbor too, and you have to love your neighbor as yourself. And they twist every virtue and every value into a weapon of enmity and hate. That's the politics of compliance. That's how it works. And Mao Zedong was the world leader, the most expert practitioner of it up until the present day, which I think he may have been succeeded at this point because it's happening on the global scale in 10 dimensions at once. And the target is you. So, how do you deal with the politics of compliance? How do you get people to stop hating their neighbors, to stop snitching on their neighbors, to stop pressuring their neighbors? How do you get people to stop blaming their neighbors? It turns out, and I hesitate in this room to call it a vaccine, but it turns out there is something that we could liken to a vaccine in its platonic ideal form. And that is that it turns out that when you expose this dynamic, it inoculates people against falling for this dynamic. When people realize that this is a manipulative play, and it can be described, and I just did it in 6 minutes, so I know it can be done. When you can describe how this play works and give them concrete examples of how it's been applied to them in the recent past so that they can see it for themselves, they are far less likely to fall for the next one. And if they do fall for the next one, they fall for it for a much shorter duration. In other words, the vaccine here is a lack of trust in these authorities. So here's kind of the societal situation, and then I'll give you something that I think maybe you already know, but I want to clarify for you and close. The situation that we're in, my Instagram algorithm is probably powered by AI, and it badly knows me, but somehow it figured out, since I spend a lot of time on airplanes, that I might like airplanes, and it's been propagandizing me with pilot videos, which are very fascinating, and I watch all of them, feeding the algorithm further. And recently it showed me a video of a horrible situation where a commercial flight took off, and within minutes the entire instrumentation of the cockpit went down. No altimeter, no nav computer, nothing, not even a radio. The entire instrument apparatus in the aircraft died. So normally in society, our trusted and venerable institutions are our instrument panel, if we think of this society as a plane flying through the air. And what you have to be able to do is fly the plane, get where you're going, or get somewhere, and land the plane on runway. That's the basic principle of flight, period, if you want it to be a safe flight. When you have your instruments, they really help. When you don't have your instruments, you're in another situation. So obviously this plane turned around, found the runway, landed safely, even without a radio to contact the traffic control tower. They somehow figured out how to signal and were able to get runway clearance and land the plane. So it's possible. The point is, when I bring this up, we as a society have our instrument panel, which is our institutions, fully captured by this ideology. We just listened to a litany of things that we think we should be able to trust that we can't trust. CDC is a bad word now in our society. I see more people who think that whatever the CDC or FDA says, you should do the opposite, than I meet people who think you should believe those things now. So what do you do to land the plane? You have to use your common sense and your senses and your expertise to do what you have to do. The pilots have to visually, trusting their eyes and their ears, their very senses, figure out where the runway is, figure out how high up they are, figure out how fast they're going, and land the plane. And it can be done. So the vaccine, and I hesitate on that word, that you need is to expose the dynamic of the politics of compliance to as many people as you can so they don't fall for it. In the meantime, as many people like yourselves who are awake need to start using your senses, determining reality, follow the facts, we're hearing different phrases for this, and do everything in your power to fly without the instruments, these corrupt institutions, until that trust bottoms out and we can start to rebuild them into something or replace them with something that's worthy of our trust and our respect, which will take decades. In the meantime, this is the perfect audience I know to tell this to. We hear a lot about speaking the truth. We opened about speaking the truth. I want to tell you something just to change your perspective on this in a tiny way that means everything. It is not enough to tell the truth. I'm going to wax biblical on you. You have to love the truth. You have to love the truth with all of your heart and all of your mind and all of your soul and all of your strength. And then you must love your neighbor as yourself by telling him the truth as well. Why this is important is because if you tell the truth and the pressure of hatecraft or the politics of compliance comes to you hard enough, you will buckle. But if you love the truth, you will not. You will stand for the truth. You will seek the truth. You will defend the truth when it's under attack. You will defend other people who are standing for, seeking, and speaking the truth, because it's the truth that you love, and you love it more than anything. And when you love the truth, speaking the truth becomes easy. You don't have to worry. You're like David Martin. You don't care if you get kicked out of CPAC. I've never been allowed to speak at CPAC, so I don't care. Take that, Matt Schlapp. I'm just kidding. I know, Matt, it's okay. I'm just joking. So I want to just thank you for letting me come and tell you the politics of compliance. The Maoist dynamic is what they've used through COVID. It's what they will use for disease X or whatever. It is what they've used for the deplorable MAGAs. It is what they use in all of the identity politics. It's what they're using in environmentalism. It's the same play over and over and over and over again. And the target is you, to destroy you if you disagree, to bring you in under coercion if you're in doubt, and to turn you into a weapon of the state if you've already given in and complied. Learning and understanding this dynamic is crucial. Loving the truth and telling it is the truth.
All right, that's all I got for you guys today. Hopefully that was helpful. Share this video with your friends. We are under these experiments in America as I make this video, all right? And we're going to have to snap out of it, y'all. And it's not going to be easy either, right? It's going to be hard. But if we don't do it, it's going to be even harder when we get to that destination, all right? Share this video with your friends so they can understand it. A lot of people don't understand it. And we'll see you guys on the next video. And real quick before you get out of here, think about COVID and how they kept stringing you along. And if everyone could just comply, we could stop this already, right? It's a big setup, y'all.